again. Heavy rains lash Mumbai, putting Mumbaikers' lives out of tracks. Every year, metropolitan Mumbai witnesses heavy torrential rains which wreak havoc almost in all the parts of the city. 10 years ago, on this day, the city of dreams came to a standstill as the island city and the suburbs received the 8th heaviest ever recorded 24-hour rainfall, thus causing floods. Heavy rainfall leading to floods is one of the ugly faces of climate change. Climate change majorly impacts urban areas. As cities are rapidly getting developed and populated, it's difficult for the city dwellers to escape the negative effects of climate change.
Hi, this is Pooja Solanki and I welcome you all to Expert Advice. Let us have a look at how urbanization is taking place at a rapid pace and the effects of climate change on cities.
We live in a world that is increasingly urbanizing. By 2030, nearly 60% of the global population is projected to be urban, with the developing world housing nearly 80% of this population. Over 90% of urban growth is occurring in developing countries, which will add an estimated 70 million new urban residents each year. By 2030, all developing regions, including Asia and Africa, will have more people living in urban than rural areas. This growth is leading to increased pressure on resources like land, infrastructure like water supply, and services like transport system. Urban areas are assuming a leading role in contributing to the GDPs of nations. In 2007, people living in 600 cities, that is 22% of global population, generated $30 trillion of GDP. In 2025, the top 600 cities will contribute $64 trillion of GDP, that is 60% of global GDP. Experts suggest that urbanization should be promoted and planned to reap maximum development goals. But development goals of the cities are seriously undermined by climate change impacts. In the recent past and even today, many parts of the world have been subjected to major losses and damages incurred by fatal disasters. The very recent Georgia floods blurred the lines between the wild and the humankind, resulting into loss of lives of both humans and the animals. This was coupled with a significant damage to the country, especially in its capital city, Tbilisi. Besides Hurricane Sandy in US, Cyclone Hudhud in Andhra Pradesh and Orissa, and 2013 Uttarakhand floods and 2014 Kashmir floods have caused severe damage to cities, resulting into loss of property and claiming innumerable lives. India's geography and climate are as varied as the country. The Himalayas mark the northern boundaries, the Thar Desert the western, a 7,500-kilometer densely populated coastline along the peninsula, and a heavily monsoon-dependent economy, all make India vulnerable to the effects of climate change. The future predicted impacts of climate change, as per the 2004 report of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, include a decrease in snow cover in the Himalayas, erratic monsoons, rising sea levels, and an increase in the frequency and intensity of floods. There is already evidence of prominent increase in the intensity and frequency of extreme weather events across Asia. Such impacts are likely to reduce the availability of fresh water, threaten food security, affect agricultural production and the people dependent on it, adversely impact natural ecosystems and human health, and exacerbate existing coastal zone problems across a densely populated coastline.
Whatever the problem may be, there is a solution indeed. And that's why on Expert Advice today, we have someone who has an optimum solution to the issue of climate change and how we can protect our cities from its adverse effects.
A consultant on science and policy of climate change. He provides consultation and ideas on the role of energy-efficient buildings with respect to climate change and the advantages to businesses by going green. He has also worked as consultant on carbon credits related to renewable energy and energy-efficient buildings. Lately, he has also started consulting and imparting ideas on designing and building smart cities. Meet Sandeep Goswami, the Chief Operating Officer of Fountainhead 2 Cleantech India, an energy-efficient architectural and interior design company.
Hello and welcome to the show, sir.
Hi Pooja, how are you doing?
I'm good. And how are you?
Fine, fine.
Okay. Now, since we are talking about climate change and its impact on the cities, I would like to know, as we have already seen, what impact climate change has on our cities. So, which do you think, which of the disasters has the maximum impact?
Well, Pooja, all disasters are disasters, so it's very difficult to pinpoint and say which disaster has a maximum impact, because each disaster would have its own intensity depending on the area it has impacted, the scale of the disaster. Having said that, there are two most prominent things which we look at. One is the floods, and the other one is the drought. Now, with the drought, it can still be managed with socio-political science. As you can see, for the last 1 year, California has been taking care of such problems, and they have a severe drought happening over the last 1 year. But when you come down to floods, floods are two types. You have a heavy rainfall for a short period and it impacts a short area, and something which impacts a very large swath of area. But in both conditions, when there is floods, you will find the whole houses and everything inundated. When you have houses inundated, automobiles inundated, you will find the automobiles, they leak their petrol. Homes, we know, are having furnishings, and they are all having toxic minerals and chemicals. Now almost everybody has electronic items at home, and electronic is a very hazardous chemical. So all that creates a cesspool of dangerous chemical sinking into the ground with the water. And then when the water is flowing down the rivers downstream, it goes and irrigates the canals, through the canals the fields, and in the fields you have this dangerous toxic chemicals going in. I mean, we all know that water today is dangerous. Why else we would be having bottled drinking water and purifiers otherwise? And you have those hand pumps which are painted red today in villages because they are having arsenic. So this is a cause which can manifest and become much bigger because of climate change and the floods which are occurring. This is one of the primary reasons I would say flood is one of the more danger of the things when I talk about disasters.
Moving further, I would like to know, since we are heading towards rapid urbanization and since we are prone to climate change disasters, so tell me any one catastrophe that is awaited which shall destroy our cities as well as the mankind.
There is no such predictions which we as climate resilient people can do, Pooja. But having said that, all the indicators, all the parameters of climate change science shows that the anthropogenic warming or the human-induced global warming is having a serious impact on the climate, and the climate is changing to a great extent. And this extension of extensive change in the climate is creating severe, extreme weather conditions, be it drought, be it flood. For example, as I was saying earlier, what happens when you are getting irrigated with flood waters, which is cesspool of poisonous, chemicals like barium, cadmium, arsenic. Recently we had this fiasco about a food company where people were talking about certain chemicals laced into that food, which is a very fast food, a very popular fast food. Now everybody media made a very big hype of it. But what they were not asking was, there was a recent flood in our memory towards the north, where the whole valley was flooded. Now, where do you think that water went? It came into the paddy fields and the wheat fields. Do the government even think that we should test those food and check whether they are poisonous today? So with climate change, when you will have extreme weather conditions, the extreme weather conditions are bound to create drought, bound to create floods. The floods will be inundating large urban areas, which is going to create such dangerous cesspool of chemicals going into our food chain. So this is a real disaster. Leptospirosis, H1N1. You create a wrong kind of a design, you create a lot of things. So the virulent diseases, that's a fact which is of life, which is part of climate change. So there's no such one thing there's no Nostradamus prediction that all the world will go down, but yes, these things are happening. Recent report, as recent as today, the World Climate, the UN has seen that there is a sudden melting of the icebergs, which is creating in the Arctic areas, which is going to create a lot of sea level rise. Chennai, which has got the longest Asia's longest marina, is expected to be underwater by the 2040s, something which is at a touching distance for young generation. So that these are the kind of things which we are looking at, which can impact us and it can create disasters. The other part which you can also look at is with climate change, rivers, and most of our civilization, be it the old one or the the recent ones, are all riverine civilization. Take any country, any in the world, the famous cities are near the rivers, right? Be it if it dries down or it floods, you can imagine the impact it will have. So those are the disasters which we are looking at. To understand the solution, we must understand the problem first in very simple terms. So what we require is to understand that the solution has to come from all stakeholders. The government is primarily responsible for creating the laws and all, but it is the stakeholders, the public at large, every one of us. We have to come together.
So in such a scenario, what do you think is the solution?
To understand the solution, we must understand the problem first in very simple terms. So what we require is to understand that the solution has to come from all stakeholders. The government is primarily responsible for creating the laws and all, but it is the stakeholders, the public at large, every one of us. We have to come together and understand what is climate, what is global warming, and what kind of climate resilience cities we need to build. In the recent memory, we had Mumbai flooding. There were sudden deaths, and the media again, everybody starts talking about there's a flooding and all, but you have to just roll back a bit and look at the events before the rains happened. We were talking about no water for Mumbai, and this nail-biting situation, this drama happens almost every year. So we look at rains not having, then Mumbai is not having water for more than 10 days, 20 days, 15 days, and then it's like a cricket match going on. So, and then we have rains, and then you see everything flooding up because there are choked drains, there is a cesspool of dirt everywhere, wrong design, urban designs are happening. Recently we have come to understand that we have 10 new different places where floods will occur. Now, what do you think those floods would be occurring? Because in the total urban planning, we have been building designs without actually looking at how the water would flow, how everything would come into it. So, to get the solutions, we have to first understand and have to connect the dots. For example, in the rains, if you would just read the newspapers, the general public reads the newspapers and see, there was a cave-in the South Mumbai on the roads. There are tree falls, there is a flooding, there is a drying of the lakes. Now imagine if you can make that humongous. It's just that happens just in one day of rainfall. Think if that is for a week of sustained heavy rainfall, what are we going to see as a disaster? This impact which is going to come can only be solved when we start thinking in terms of creating areas which are perhaps more urban or climate resilient buildings. And we can look into creating rooftop, all over the world today people are talking about doing vegetated roofs. We are talking about creating rainwater harvesting. Just imagine if Mumbai as a city had thought, and every building talks about doing rainwater harvesting, then all that rain which falls and goes back down to the sea could have been harvested, solving a lot of problems of water today, taking away the pressure. We must also understand that to feed Mumbai water, we deny water to a lot of villages which are surrounding Mumbai. And we all know that there is a drought situation in Maharashtra. While I'm talking about Mumbai, it's not just Mumbai we are talking about. Every city has more or less similar issues, and these issues can only be solved when there is a public participation and understanding that where we stand, how we can make the things better, design buildings. When we say, smart cities or green buildings, it's not the color of the building which is green. It's essentially the buildings are more energy efficient. Like we as consultants, we come in and we work to make the building energy positive, water positive. The materials which are used, they have to be very scientifically derived. So India, for example, has 6 climatic areas. I mean, you can leave one of them because it is only on the the higher plains. But these climatic conditions, buildings need to adapt to those. So we don't do that. We try and make one single typology everywhere, and that doesn't fit. So these are the few things which happens, which needs to be taken care of.
Exactly. Now moving further, since you're mentioning about climate resilience so much, I would like to know what exactly is climate resilience?
See, the climate resilience is the ability of the society, a city essentially, when you're talking about, is made of nothing but human society. The ability of the society to bounce back from extreme climate situations or climate induced situations, such as, there's an energy deficiency, there's a water deficiency, or there is a calamity, and to come out of it and to be able to adapt to the changing environments. That essentially means what is climate efficiency. Cities need to adopt the sustainable building and sustainable practice, which will make it the most climate resilient ever. When I say sustainable buildings, we are talking about doing energy efficient buildings, which
Okay, moving further, I would like to know how cities can be made climate resilient as per you.
that's the most fundamental question you have asked, and the most crucial question that needs to be answered. Cities need to adopt the sustainable building and sustainable practice, which will make it the most climate resilient ever. When I say sustainable buildings, we are talking about doing energy efficient buildings, which most of us consultants are aware of, and you would be aware of also, what we call in a normal term green buildings. Essentially, a green building is nothing but an energy efficient. When I say energy, it means water, it means electricity, it also means energy efficient in terms of the building design, because a building industry consumes almost 40% of the world's resources. So if you look at a building, you will find buildings are having from when you're making it steel, cement, all the industrial sectors come into play when you're making a building. When you look at interiors, you have got everything from leather, so from mining, from extraction, from leather, from wood. There is nothing which we leave in a building industry. First and foremost, we have to make this sustainable. We have to make it energy efficient, and once we make these things proper, it's going to impact and make the cities go towards more climate resilience. You would be surprised to know that Mumbai and New Delhi had signed a program, the cities program, called the C40 cities. The climate resilient 40 cities. Very few actually know that, and well, I don't know what happened to that. But world over, there is a program for making cities climate resilient, because the zero impact to the city has to come. Fundamentally, what you require to make the cities is that, imagine today if all the architects, and there's a ruling comes in, and almost all the practicing architects and all follow the norms of energy efficient buildings or design green buildings. So whether it is just an individual bungalow or you're talking about a complete township to be built within the city, these together will coalesce and create an environment which is sustainable. And when sustainability comes in, that is when we are going to actually see the difference, and the resilience will come. In another word, you see, nature has always had, you know, how do I say, you know, the ability to bounce back. You know, you have a volcano, you see large swathes of area destroyed, but you know, after a few years, it regenerates, it regrows. So we have to learn something from nature. There are programs which are more conducive, where there are architects who are talking about designing what the way nature talks about. You know, so these things need to be adapted more and brought into the fore. But to go there, you first have to become more simplistic. The simplistics are to follow. Already, the government of India has formulated a system called GRIHA. This is a green rating for integrated habitat assessment. The US has something called LEED, that is the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And in fact, the first ones who started here were our, you would be surprised to know, our own industry itself, the CII with the Indian Green Building Council. So these things are still in a very, very nascent stage, but once they come together and they, you know, they are more mature, people start accepting them, that is when we will have, you know, climate resilient and a more sustainable city. Small points are required which needs to be added to them.
Okay, so moving further, tell me how climate resilient cities are better and different from our conventional or current cities.
So the climate resilience, essentially, you see, today global warming is a fact. Almost all of us are facing the adverse impact of global warming. The unseasonal rains which you found in February. Economy is circular, as you know. So if it impacts agriculture at one end, you would find probably the retail sector or the fast moving consumer goods, your squashes and your juice, and probably will not be there in your shelves. So it is a circular economy, you know. So the malls, if the shelves are empty, then the shops is not there. So everything is linked. So to the climate resilient cities, as you were saying, how they are better than your regular cities, is essentially you make a development plan which takes care of the energy needs. When I say energy, there is a reduced energy in the total, you know, building plan, the total transportation plan, total consumption plan. There is a better rainwater harvesting system. There is a better allocation of roads. There is a district which the Prime Minister our earlier Prime Minister, Mr. Manmohan Singh, had started with. He was trying to do, you know, centralized food areas within the cities, because the city is big as an urban sprawl. It starts growing, expanding and expanding, eating up on all the, you know, the agricultural land. But at the end of the day, we must understand that if you look at the present cities, there's hardly any fresh food which you can ever eat. There's nothing called an open space which you can relax upon. But when you're doing a sustainable planned city, it takes care, it looks into it in a manner where you will have rooftop vegetation, or you will have certain amount of areas where some of the food the city itself grows. So there is a reduction of pressure on the country or the whole, or the agricultural sector, on to feed that city, because the city is huge. It gets fresh produce. Over and above that, when you do rainwater harvesting and other things, it reduces the overall heat island effect of that place. So it makes that area more ambient, it makes it more healthy. The old cities, and unfortunately, you know, the cities which have come up, they have not come as a planned city. You know, this is an urban sprawl which has grown organically. Okay, and this is one point which we need to understand, that even today, if you look at the large metropolitan cities, the fringe suburbs of the cities are still growing, and they are growing in an unplanned manner, in a very dangerous unplanned manner. While we cannot arrest the inner sides, we have to try and think of making those more climate resilient and more smarter, because then only we can come in between. Because if you keep on creating the mess in concentric circles, we are only going to increase that.